The sky over the city of Lagos that afternoon collapsed into a gloomy gray, pouring down heavy raindrops that plowed the jagged asphalt road. In this city, the rain could never wash away the poverty. It only made the mud in the suburban market filthier, blending with the acrid smoke from car exhausts and the pungent smell of grease. Under the torn awning of an abandoned stall, Zikora sat huddled on a low plastic chair. She wore a faded, baggy floral dress, its hem soaked with rainwater. Her dark skin turned pale from the cold. But what made passers-by turn their faces away was not her destitution, but the bumpy, raw red scar stretching across the left half of her face. The burn mark was so hideous, it looked as if the fire had just licked across her flesh yesterday, completely destroying the delicate features on her face. Zikora's gaze dropped, staring blankly into the muddy puddle at her feet. For 3 days, she had sat here, huddled in the corner of the market, selling cold cornmeal cakes to taste the cruel truth of this world. At the bottom of society, people tear each other apart just for a mere look. She memorized that in silence. A blue canvas-covered truck screeched to a halt right in front of the mud puddle, splashing a stream of pitch-black water all the way onto Zikora's tray of cakes. 4 city task force officers jumped down. The captain, Kareem, had a massive physique, his dark skin gleaming with sweat despite the rain, wearing a khaki uniform so tight it looked ready to rip at the biceps. He rhythmically tapped a rubber baton against his palm, his cruel eyes sweeping over the street vendors who were frantically packing their belongings to flee. His gaze abruptly halted when he saw Zikora. Extreme disgust was evident in the wrinkles at the corners of his mouth, kicking away a nearby plastic chair. What an eyesore! Who allowed you to bring this disgusting face out here to pollute the streets? Zikora shrank back, her 2 hands clutching the dirty aluminum tray of corn cakes, trembling, bowing her head. Sir, please have mercy. I am only borrowing this corner to sell the rest of these cakes to get by. Sneering, swinging his foot to kick the cake tray directly. Mercy? The city police aren't paid to show mercy to trash. The deafening clatter of metal crashing rang out. The corn cakes rolled into the pitch-black puddle, mixing with garbage and sewage. Zikora widened her eyes. This naked cruelty made her chest tighten. She reached out, intending to pick up the tray, but Kareem had already stomped his studded heels on the cakes, crushing them into a mushy mess. Get out of here right now. Your face makes the tourists sick. Raising the baton high, aiming to strike it down on Zikora's skinny shoulder. At the exact moment the baton sliced through the wind coming down, a rough hand, smeared with grease, dashed out from the curtain of rain, tightly grabbing Kareem's wrist. The resistance force was so strong that the giant man had to step back half a pace. Malik stood there. He was a mechanic with a sturdy build, his dark skin glistening with rainwater, wearing a blue worker's coverall that was frayed at the elbows. Malik's face was square, his features resolute, and his eyes held a strangely profound calmness, standing in stark contrast to Kareem's chaotic aggression. Calm, but firm voice. Sir, please stop. She isn't harming anyone. Kareem violently yanked his hand back, stepping backwards, and glared at the person who just intervened, gritting his teeth. Who the hell are you to lay a hand on an officer on duty? Some lowly mechanic wanting to play hero and save this monster, bowing his head slightly, keeping the exact decorum of a powerless citizen. Sir, the law permits the removal of encroaching stalls, but there is no law that allows you to trample on the food and dignity of the poor. This tray of cakes is her entire livelihood for today. Malik's measured and articulate manner only fueled the fire of wounded pride within the task force officer. A miserable wretch daring to use logic to lecture him. Kareem growled, swinging the baton to strike directly at Malik's shoulder. A dull thud of the impact rang out. Malik staggered slightly, his eyebrows knitting tightly in pain, but he absolutely did not cry out, nor did he fight back. He knew that with just one swing of resistance, he would be thrown into a cell, his dilapidated garage would be smashed to pieces, and his frail mother back in his hometown would have no one to provide for her. You like carrying her debt, right? Spitting a wad of saliva right next to the toe of Malik's shoe. 50,000 naira on the spot, fine. Otherwise, I'm dragging both of you down to the station for resisting an officer on duty. 50,000 naira. In the shadow of the awning, Zikora's eyes flashed with a glimmer of shock. She knew exactly how massive that amount was for a mechanic in this slum. It was rent, a whole month's food money, or life-sustaining medical bills. She looked up at Malik, waiting for him to back down. That was the way of the world. People could hand out a few words of pity, but when money spoke, all kindness evaporated. Malik clenched his jaw tightly. The rain poured relentlessly over his resolute face. He reached into his grease-stained pocket, pulling out a wad of crumpled bills, carefully tied with a rubber band. It was every single penny he had scraped together over the past 2 months to pay his cruel landlord tonight. If he lost this money, he would have to sleep on the street tonight. He slowly peeled off the rubber band, counting each bill one by one, the banknotes soaked in rainwater, and then placed them into Kareem's hand, holding out the wad of money. "Here is the fine, sir. Please leave her alone." Kareem snatched the money, counted it quickly, then smirked triumphantly. He tapped the baton on Malik's shoulder once as a final warning, then whistled to call his subordinates back to the truck. The vehicle revved its engine and sped off, leaving behind a bitterly stifling silence beneath the downpour. All around, the crowd began to disperse. No one dared to approach. Malik did not massage his now swollen red shoulder. He slowly bent down to the mud puddle, using his dirty hands to gently pick up the dented metal tray. He gathered a few corn cakes that had luckily not been crushed, carefully placed them back on the tray, and then turned to look at Zikora. There was absolutely no condescending pity, nor a disgusted frown when looking at her hideous scar. There was only a profound respect from one human being to another. Holding out his rough hand. "Stand up, young lady. The rain is cold. You'll get sick. My garage is right at that street corner. You can take shelter there for a bit." Zikora stared blankly at the hand extended before her. Her chest trembled because of a gesture so small yet as heavy as a mountain. Trembling, she reached out and grasped his hand. His hand was rough and calloused, but it transmitted an unusually steadfast warmth. Inside the dilapidated repair garage, the smell of engine oil and rusted metal intertwined. The corrugated iron roof, riddled with holes, dripped water pit a pat onto the old tires. Malik pulled out a clean styrofoam cooler for Zikora to sit on. He took a coarse but dry cloth towel and handed it to her, then busied himself lighting a small stove in the corner of the garage to boil a kettle of water. "My name is Malik," he spoke up, breaking the exhausted silence. "You don't need to cover your face. A wound does not define a person's worth. Those guys from earlier, they are impoverished in their souls, which is why they have to leech off the self-esteem of others to feel powerful." Zikora held the towel, rainwater still streaming down her messy braided hair. She looked at his broad, sturdy back as he meticulously poured hot water into the only plastic cup that wasn't cracked. With a trembling voice, looking up at him with tear-soaked eyes. "They were right. I am both poor and possess a face that ghosts and demons would reject. You just threw away all of your money to an unfamiliar piece of trash. What will you use to keep living, Malik?" Malik turned around, placing the cup of warm water into her hands. The corners of his lips curved into a slight smile, a smile so serene it was heartbreaking. "Money can be earned back with these hands. But if I close my eyes today and turn my back to watch you get trampled, I would permanently lose my own dignity. And living without dignity, how is that any different from a stalled machine?" In the flickering light of the incandescent bulb, Zikora bowed her head looking at the warm cup of water, a thin wisp of steam rising to touch her face. A warm feeling seeped through every vein. At this exact moment, amidst the deafening sound of rain battering the holy tin roof, she knew she had just found the most brilliant diamond hidden among the mud and mire of Lagos City. Darkness swallowed the Ajegunle slum faster than anywhere else in Lagos. The rickety streetlights only blinked a few beats before shutting off completely, giving way to the flickering light from half-burnt charcoal stoves and candles gleaming through narrow door cracks. Malik strode briskly through the muddy alley, his shoulder still stinging from the blow delivered by the city officer earlier that afternoon. But his physical pain was quickly crushed by a cruel sight unfolding right in front of his shabby rented room. All of Malik's belongings, a filthy foam mattress, a ceiling fan with broken blades, a few worn-out clothes, and even the tin box holding his old mechanic tools, were lying haphazardly in the muddy puddle of rainwater. Standing on the porch was Chike, the obese landlord with a swollen belly that pressed against the folds of the cloth wrapped around his waist. His skin was slick with grease and sweat. Clamped in his lips was a cheap, foul-smelling cigar. Two tattooed young men, wielding wooden clubs, stood with their hands clasped behind Chike, like hounds waiting to tear into their prey, pointing the wooden club directly at Malik's face. "Get off my land! I gave you 10 days past the deadline, you little brat. Chike's boarding house is not a charity ward," the landlord roared, spitting a glob of saliva that grazed the torn toe of Malik's shoe. Malik stopped dead in his tracks. He clenched his rough hands so tightly, his knuckles turned white, biting his teeth to swallow the flames of resentment flaring in his chest. He had just handed over all his savings to save the cake-selling girl that afternoon. Now, his pockets were completely empty. Bowing his head, his voice suppressing its desperation but maintaining proper decorum, "Boss Chike, please have mercy and be lenient. This afternoon, I encountered an unexpected incident, so I lost all my money. If you just give me 3 more days, I swear I will work extra night shifts at the garage to pay you back every single naira," shrieking with laughter, a high-pitched, savage sound. "Incident? What does your incident have to do with my wallet? Do you think I don't know you just threw your money out the window playing hero to save that cake-selling monster in the market? If you want to carry the world's burdens, then go sleep under a bridge." Saying so, Chike jutted his chin to signal. A henchman stepped forward, swinging his foot to kick Malik's tin box upside down. The wrenches and spanners, his most precious assets for earning a living, scattered into the pitch-black mud. Malik lunged forward, dropping to both knees in the dirty puddle, hurriedly gathering each cold metal tool. At that exact moment, the brick phone in his pants pocket vibrated. A text message from the hometown clinic in Kano. "Your mother is coughing up blood again. We need 20,000 naira for emergency medicine before tomorrow morning. Otherwise, the clinic will stop her IV fluids." Malik stared blankly at the dimly glowing words on the cracked screen. His chest felt as though someone was crushing it with iron pliers. No home, no money. His elderly mother's life was hanging by a fragile thread. In the middle of the freezing night rain, the resilient mechanic bowed his head into his mud-stained hands, tasting the absolute depths of helplessness. The next morning, the atmosphere at the dilapidated repair garage was even more stifling. Malik had stayed up all night, dozing off under the chassis of a broken-down truck. He was struggling to tighten bolts under the truck, trying to use hard labor to numb his fear over his mother's medical bills, when a familiar silhouette appeared at the garage door. Zikora walked in. The bumpy, raw red scar on her face seemed even more hideous in the daylight. She wore the same old floral dress from yesterday, clutching a frayed canvas tote bag to her chest, which was bulging abnormally. Cowering, hesitant voice. "Benefactor, I brought some freshly steamed corn cakes. You saved my life yesterday. I have nothing to repay you." Malik slid out from under the chassis, grabbing a rag to wipe the grease off his hands. His face was haggard, dark circles clearly visible under his calm eyes, but he still smiled. Gentle voice. "You don't need to call me benefactor. Just call me Malik. Thank you for breakfast. This is exactly what I need right now." Zikora secretly observed him. The sharp eyes of a discerning heiress registered every exhausted wrinkle, every streak of dried mud on the mechanic's clothes. She pretended to clumsily place the wrapped cakes on a rusted steel drum, and in a perfect split second, she intentionally let the canvas bag slip off her shoulder, falling out of sight into a hidden corner behind some old tires. I have to go to the market and beg people to let me set up a stall. Goodbye, Malik." She hastily bowed her head in farewell, then turned on her heels and walked quickly out of the garage, disappearing into the bustling crowd. About an hour later, while cleaning up the pile of tires, Malik's hand brushed against something bulky. Pulling out the canvas bag, he realized it belonged to the cake-selling girl. "Miss!" Malik called out towards the door, but the street was filled only with the deafening honking of cars. He intended to hang the bag on a hook to wait for her return, but the broken zipper had come undone, revealing what was inside. Malik held his breath. His brain seemed to stop working. His rough hands trembled as he flipped open the flap of the bag. Money. Stacks of Naira bills in the highest denomination, crisp and new, neatly bound by bank straps, dense, jam-packed, estimated to be no less than 5 million Naira. Standing in the middle of the shabby garage, surrounded by the smell of engine oil and garbage, Malik felt as if he were being sucked into a deep abyss of temptation. 5 million Naira. This money could buy 10 of Chike's boarding houses outright. It could transfer his mother to the best hospital in Lagos. He could open a spacious repair garage and never have to bow his head to any city task force officer ever again. Internal conflict tore at his soul. A poor, cake-selling girl couldn't possibly own such a massive amount of money. Or was this money she had just found? Or money dropped by some gang boss? If he took just one stack, enough to send home for his mother's medicine, who would know? 15 kilometers away, on the ultra-luxurious banana island in Lagos, billionaire Niyi Adabio was sitting in his quiet office, fully paneled in solid mahogany. He wore a custom-tailored charcoal gray suit. The wrinkles on his forehead deeply etched the sharpness of an old wolf in the business world. In his hand was a glass of amber-colored whiskey swirling gently. The billionaire's cold eyes were glued to a large computer screen. A micro-camera, sophisticatedly hidden inside the button of the canvas bag, was live-streaming every expression on Malik's face, speaking to himself in a deep, hoarse voice full of skepticism. Let's see how much the self-respect of a person at the bottom of society is worth. When hunger tears at your eardrums, all moral platitudes become trash. On the screen, Malik slowly reached out to touch the stack of money. His breathing was heavy. Bead-sized drops of sweat broke out on his forehead. The image of his elderly mother coughing up blood and the shrill laughter of the landlord trampling on his tools intertwined, urging him to zip the bag shut and hide it. But then, Malik yanked his hand back, as if burned. His eyes were tightly shut, the resolute lines on his face tense with extreme suppression. He remembered Zikora's pleading eyes in the rain yesterday. He remembered the slap of poverty. Muttering to himself, his voice thick and hoarse, living without dignity. How is that any different from a stalled machine? He zipped the bag shut, hastily taking off his sweat-soaked worker's uniform jacket to wrap tightly around the bag as camouflage, and dashed out of the garage. Lagos, in the late afternoon, began to pour down its characteristic showers. Rainwater lashed at his face, freezing cold, but it could not extinguish the fire of determination in Malik's heart. For 4 straight hours, he scoured the shabbiest markets, wading through garbage-flooded alleys, asking every street vendor about a corn cake-selling girl with a large scar on her face. His legs were exhausted, his stomach was starving, but he absolutely did not loosen his grip on the bag. It wasn't until night fell, under the sickly yellow light of an abandoned church on the edge of the slum, that Malik finally saw Zikora's small figure huddled on the cracked stone steps. He ran over, panting heavily, his chest heaving violently. Rainwater streamed down his square face, kneeling on one knee on the stone step, handing over the carefully wrapped bag. "Miss, you forgot this. It's very dangerous. Never bring something this valuable to places like my garage again." Zikora snapped her head up. The scar makeup seemed to blur slightly under the rain, but her eyes were wide open, holding a soul-shaking astonishment. She knew just how desperate he was. She knew he had been evicted. And yet, this man braved the rain for hours, facing the dangers of the Lagos streets at night, just to return to her the very thing that could change his entire life. Trembling as she took the bag, her voice choking up. "Mr. Malik, you know what's inside. Why didn't you take it? It could save you from this poverty." Malik slowly stood up. Under the pouring rain, the poor mechanic's figure appeared as sturdy as a fortress wall. Bowing respectfully to her miss, "Poverty might rob me of my bed, but it has no right to rob me of my honesty. Money that doesn't belong to me will only dirty my hands if I take it, and these hands, I still need them to fix cars." He turned and walked away, blending into the blinding rain, returning to his empty stomach and a homeless night, leaving Zikora standing completely stunned, hugging the canvas bag. Through the lens of the hidden camera, billionaire Nii Adabio slowly set his wine glass on the table. The skeptical gaze of the old business wolf shattered for the first time. He nodded slightly, an incredibly rare smile appearing on the corner of his lips. The test had yielded its result. Last night's rain had stopped, giving way to the characteristically harsh Lagos sun beating down on the rusted tin roofs. At the dilapidated repair garage, Malik stretched and crawled out from under the broken-down truck. Last night, this greasy chassis was his only bed. His body ached, his empty stomach churned with pangs of hunger, but his eyes still maintained their calm, resilient look. He twisted the rusty faucet in the corner of the wall, splashing the murky water onto his face to wash away the exhaustion. From the end of the alley, a small figure slowly approached. Zikora appeared, still in that baggy old floral dress, her face bearing the hideous raw red scar. In her hands was a plastic thermal food carrier. Seeing Malik covered in mud and motor oil, Zikora's chest gave a slight twinge. She knew he had lost everything because he refused to keep her bag of 5 million naira last night. This mechanic's honesty wasn't an act. It was a character forged from the very depths of poverty. Hesitantly stepping into the garage, offering the food carrier, "Mr. Malik, you were soaked in the rain all night. I brought some tomato stew with rice and chicken. Please don't refuse. This is all I can do to thank you." Malik hurriedly wiped his rough hands on a torn rag, his eyes flashing with a rare gleam of warmth amidst the stifling morning, smiling, bowing his head to accept it. "Thank you, miss. This meal to me right now is more precious than treasure." The very moment Malik opened the lid of the food carrier, an ear-piercing roar of an engine tore through the quiet atmosphere of the poor neighborhood. A gleaming silver, low-clearance sports supercar aggressively hurtled into the empty dirt lot in front of the garage, braking sharply and sending dirt and muddy water splashing everywhere. The car doors swung open upwards. Babatunde stepped out. He was a young master of Lagos high society, a man frantically aiming for the position of son-in-law to the Adabio Empire. Even though he had never once laid eyes on the face of the heiress Zikora, Babatunde was in his 30s, his impeccably groomed skin flawlessly smooth, wearing an expensive jade-green silk suit, a dazzling diamond-encrusted Rolex watch on his wrist. His aura radiated arrogance and disdain, a man used to using money to suffocate the lives of others. Behind Babatunde were two burly bodyguards in black suits, gripping stun batons. The young master walked into the garage, taking a white silk handkerchief to cover his nose to ward off the wretched smell of grease, kicking the toe of his shiny leather shoe against an old tire, jutting his chin. "Which of you is the head mechanic at this dump? Come out and clean the mud off my front bumper. Leave a single scratch, and I'll buy your whole bloodline." Malik set the food box down, carefully wiping his hands once more to avoid sullying the customer's sight. He stepped out, maintaining the proper, measured attitude of a lowly laborer. Bowing deeply, "Sir, please forgive the shabbiness of the garage. I will bring out a specialized solution to clean your bumper immediately." Babatunde smirked, his condescending gaze sweeping over Malik's frayed work coveralls. But then, his gaze faltered when he saw Zikora hiding beside the steel drum. The bumpy, raw red scar on half of her face caught his eye. An expression of extreme disgust became clearly visible on the young master's face. Stepping back, half a pace, pointing his finger straight at Zikora's face. "My God, what kind of freak is this? You're polluting my air. Does this garage harbor river trash and infectious diseases too?" Zikora bowed her head deeply, her hands gripping the hem of her dress tightly. In the world of the ultra-rich, she was a queen. But in this torn-up corner of the garage, she had to taste the ultimate contempt from the very man who was desperate to gold-dig her family. In a shrill voice, ordering the bodyguards, "Kick that monster out right now. Don't make my eyes look at it for another second. Makes me sick." A bodyguard lunged forward, swinging his arm to grab Zikora's collar and throw her out onto the street. But quick as lightning, Malik stepped across, using his sturdy back to block the path between the bodyguard and Zikora. His chest was heaving, the joints in his hands clenching tight, bowing his head slightly, his voice calm but hard as steel. "Sir, she is my guest. I ask for your tolerance. Her appearance does not scratch your car, nor does it violate the law. Please respect her." Babatunde was stunned. A lowly mechanic dared to stand in his way and lecture him about respect? The flame of wounded pride flared up fiercely in the young master's eyes. He let out a laugh, a dry, savage laugh, stepping forward, slapping Malik hard on the cheek. "Respect? Are you talking to Babatunde about respect, you bottom feeder? You're just a dog guarding the undercarriage, and you demand to protect this monster." Steadfast, not flinching. "Sir, I am a mechanic, not a dog. Every human being is born with the right to keep their dignity. Please leave her alone. I will clean your car free of charge." Babatunde's eyes narrowed, a vile, dirty scheme flashing in his mind. He stepped back, unbuckled his diamond-encrusted Rolex watch, and tossed it heavily onto the driver's seat of the supercar, then signaled to Malik, "Fine. If you're so noble, get in and wipe clean the dashboard inside the car for me. Don't leave a single speck of dust." Malik swallowed his anger, turned to nod reassuringly at Zikora, then carefully stepped over to the supercar. He timidly used the cleanest cloth in the garage, carefully wiping every detail on the dashboard without daring to press hard. Less than a minute later, Babatunde stuck his head into the car window, his eyes flashing with cruelty, yelling fakely, "Wait a minute! Where's my watch? Where's the limited edition Rolex I just left on the driver's seat?" Malik jerked back in shock, raising both hands high to prove his innocence. Panicked, but trying to maintain decorum. "Sir, I didn't touch the driver's seat at all. Your watch was still there when I started wiping. Please check the seat gap," slapping Malik hard across the face. "Shut up! You thief! You defended that monster just to put on a show, then took advantage of when I wasn't looking to steal my stuff. That watch is worth more than your entire bloodline combined." The two bodyguards instantly lunged in, pinning Malik down hard onto the hood of a nearby broken car. Malik struggled, but the strength of a man who had starved since yesterday was no match for two giant thugs. Zikora stood stunned. Her eyes blazed with fury. She understood this framing trick perfectly well. She looked at Babatunde, a man using the dirtiest tactics to trample an innocent person, sneering, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling the police. You'll rot in jail, you brat. This garage will be leveled before noon." Babatunde stepped forward, grabbed Malik by the hair, and yanked his head back. Threatening, sinister voice. "But I, Babatunde, am a very merciful man. You want to walk away from this crime? Fine, kneel down. Get on both knees in that muddy puddle over there. Kowtow and apologize to me 3 times, and slap your own mouth with your own hand for daring to lecture me. Do it, and I'll let it slide." Zikora bit her lip so hard it bled, stepping forward. "Don't kneel, Malik. You didn't steal anything. You must not kneel before this despicable man." But Malik glanced around the garage. This was the garage of his old boss, where he was taking temporary shelter. If the police came, he would be thrown in jail, the garage would be smashed to pieces, and his mother's medicine money back home would permanently be reduced to 0. Malik slowly broke free from the grip of the two bodyguards. His calm eyes were bloodshot with resentment. The atmosphere was as dead silent as a sheet of paper. He slowly folded his trembling legs. His knees touched the pitch-black muddy puddle right in front of Babatunde's polished leather shoes. His back remained straight, but his dignity was being chopped to pieces by a man with money. Hoarse voice, bowing his head. "Sir, please be generous. I apologize for offending you." Babatunde burst into savage laughter, the sound echoing throughout the poor alley. He swung his foot, kicking hard against Malik's shoulder, sending him pitching face first into the mud, then whistled to call his bodyguards back to the car. The supercar roared away, leaving behind a mud-splattered mechanic and a disguised heiress trembling with blinding rage in her chest. Zikora rushed over, helping Malik sit up. In her mind, she had already handed down the most ruthless death sentence for Babatunde's family. Pitch-black muddy water from the puddle was still dripping in thick drops from Malik's torn work pants. Babatunde's supercar had long disappeared, but the stench of humiliation and the invisible oppression of money still hung thick in the air of the garage. Ikechukwu, the garage owner with wrinkled dark skin, wearing a yellowed tank top, stepped out from the dark corner. His grease-stained hands trembled violently. He had witnessed the entire incident, and the fear of the arrogant young master's power had defeated whatever shred of humanity remained in him. Pointing toward the door, panicked voice, "Pack your things and get out of here right now." "Malik, are you crazy? Daring to stand against a man who bites cigars and drives a sports car? They just have to snap their fingers and this ragged garage will be flattened to the ground. I cannot harbor a man who brings deadly disaster." Malik slowly stood up straight, his legs still bearing the biting cold marks of the mud. He reached out to wring dry the soaked hem of his shirt. There was absolutely no resentment or begging in the calm eyes of the mechanic. He perfectly understood the cruel rules of this slum. The weak do not have the right to protect each other when the strong have uttered a threat. Bowing deeply, maintaining the proper respect of an employee. "Boss Ikechukwu, I completely understand your hardship. You have given me a place to shelter from the rain and sun and a bowl of rice for the past year. I absolutely will not let my benefactor lose his livelihood over my meddling. Please take care." He quietly gathered a few old, worn clothes, stuffing them into a torn canvas backpack. But Babatunde's cruelty did not stop at simply stripping a poor man of his job. Just as Malik stepped 1 foot out of the garage, the piercing wail of a siren tore through the alley. A police patrol car slid across the layer of mud, braking sharply right in front of him. 2 burly police officers jumped down, their expressions as overbearing and cruel as Kareem, the city officer. Babatunde's money had run 1 step ahead, pulling out handcuffs, grabbing Malik by the collar. "Someone reported you for conspiring to steal highly valuable property and displaying rebellious behavior against a high-ranking figure. Back to the station now." They didn't need to hear explanations. Brutal elbow jabs rained down on Malik's back and ribs, forcing him to bend double and crawl into the freezing iron back of the truck. Zikora stood huddled behind the rusted tin wall, her sharp eyes registering every shove, every trampling that Malik had to endure. Her chest heaved violently. The heiress of the Adabio Empire had to bite her lip until it bled to stop herself from rushing out, pulling out her phone, and calling her armed security team to level that damn police station immediately. But she couldn't break the test. It wasn't time yet. Malik was thrown into a cramped, foul-smelling holding cell at the Victoria Island precinct, where the only light was a sickly yellow bulb flashing incessantly. The pungent stench of urine and rust rose heavily in the air. The concrete floor was freezing cold. He sat hugging his knees in the corner of the room, the bruises on his shoulder and face beginning to swell, aching straight to the marrow. His stomach churned with hunger, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the nightmare tearing at his mind. Being detained for 24 hours meant no money. No money meant the clinic in Kano would stop his mother's IV fluids tomorrow morning. Amidst the 4 silent concrete walls, the resilient mechanic bowed his head into his rough hands, biting his teeth, to swallow the tears of absolute despair of someone at the very bottom of society. 11 p.m. The soft padding of canvas shoes echoed down the silent corridor of the prison. Zikora appeared in front of the iron bars. To get in here, she had to grit her teeth and play the role of a poor younger sister, crying and pleading with the prison guard, even having to slip him the last cheap silver-plated watch she had bought at the market. Under the flickering light, her old dress looked even more threadbare, and the bumpy, bright red scar on her face was bathed in tears. But her eyes, when looking at Malik, held a profound sorrow, gripping the freezing iron bars tightly, her voice breaking. "You lost your job, your place to sleep, even the little money you had to buy medicine for your mother, and now you're thrown into this stinking animal cage. They want to drive you to your death, Malik, all because you foolishly stepped up to take the blow for an ugly monster like me. Do you see now? Your goodness in this city is nothing but trash." Malik slowly lifted his head. His face was haggard, with heavy dark circles under his eyes, and the corner of his mouth was bleeding from Babatunde's kick. However, upon seeing the poor cake-selling girl sobbing for him, he did not sigh in resentment. He slowly stood up, dragging his feet closer to the iron bars, reaching his hand through the iron gap, gently holding Zikora's hand, the corner of his lips lifting into a calm smile. "Never call yourself a monster, miss. Appearance does not make a person, the heart does. Young lady, protecting the dignity of a good woman is never foolishness, and goodness is never trash." Zikora was stunned. Her eyes opened wide, staring at him. Her tears stopped falling. Warm, deep voice, as steady as a rock amidst a raging rapid. "They have the money to bribe the police, bribe the garage owner, and imprison my body here, but they can never handcuff my self-respect. This morning, I knelt in the mud in front of that young master to save the garage of my benefactor, Ikechukwu, but my soul is still standing tall. As long as I am alive, tomorrow I will find a job again. I will scrape together every single naira to send back to my mother again. Don't cry for me. Crying will blur your beautiful eyes." In the darkness of the prison, a fierce transformation took place deep within Zikora. Malik's rough hand transmitted warmth through the freezing iron bars, completely melting away the last layer of ice of skepticism in the heart of the Adabio family heiress. Her father's harsh test was completely over. She had found a man whose knees could not be bent by gold and silver, and whose dignity could not be broken by absolute power. Zikora slowly pulled her hand back, taking a step away. She bowed her head deeply to hide her cold, ruthless gaze, like a queen about to deliver a blazing verdict of judgment. She looked at Malik one last time through the iron bars, her voice no longer trembling but deepened, pinning down every word. "Mr. Malik, get some rest. The sky tonight is very dark, but the sun tomorrow will definitely rise. I swear to you, those who forced you to kneel in the mud today will have to kneel and kowtow in apology to you in front of the entire world." Zikora turned and walked away, her canvas heels pounding against the corridor with decisive sounds. The moment she stepped out of the gate of the Victoria Island police station, she pulled a highly secure satellite phone from beneath the folds of her old dress. "Send a car to pick me up," she ordered in the cold tone of an heiress. It is time for Babatunde and his family to taste bankruptcy. The Grand Continental Hotel stretched out in the center of Victoria Island, resplendent like a giant diamond, completely contrasting the poverty besieging the slums on the outskirts of Lagos. Tonight, the hotel's largest ballroom was illuminated by 3 rows of dazzling crystal chandeliers, reflecting light onto the smooth marble floor. Melodious jazz music mingled with the clinking of crystal glasses. The entire elite class, from ministers and oil tycoons to financial magnates, had gathered here. They were waiting for a historic announcement. Billionaire Nii Adabio would officially announce the exclusive strategic partner and the sole heir to his billion-dollar empire. Babatunde walked through the sliding glass doors with the demeanor of someone who firmly believed the whole world already rested in the palm of his hand. His flawless skin was meticulously groomed, wearing a custom-tailored burgundy velvet tuxedo, and on his wrist was a limited-edition diamond-encrusted watch sparkling under the lights. He walked amidst his security detail, taking sips of champagne while laughing loudly with a group of investors. Tonight, he was absolutely certain his family would be honored as Adabio's biggest partner, and that contract would be the stepping stone for him to officially propose to the mysterious heiress he had never even met face to face. In a hidden corner near the kitchen area, Malik was standing, holding a drink tray with his rough, calloused hands. He wore a black and white server uniform temporarily borrowed from the manager, slightly tight on his muscular build and broad shoulders. The dark skin of the mechanic looked much more haggard. Deep dark circles etched under his resolute eyes. After being released from the police station due to a lack of criminal evidence, he had lost his job and his place to live. Driven to a dead end, he had to take this temporary night shift serving job. The 5,000 naira wage for tonight was the exact amount needed to pay the IV fluid fee for his mother tomorrow morning. His mother's life was betting on him perfectly, serving every single glass of wine. Malik carefully stepped out into the main hall, eyes looking straight ahead, avoiding collision with the guests, who were draped in outfits worth an entire fortune. But evil seems to always know how to sniff out goodness in order to trample it. Just as Malik walked past the VIP row of tables, Babatunde turned around. The young master's gaze stopped dead, and the condescending smile on his lips instantly transformed into a vicious smirk. Frowning, pointing his diamond-ringed finger directly at Malik's face. "Where is the manager? Since when did this five-star hotel allow a petty criminal to slip in here and serve food?" Babatunde's booming, highly slanderous voice instantly attracted the attention of dozens of powerful guests nearby. The jazz music seemed to quiet down. Malik stopped in his tracks. His jaw clenched for a split second, but then he immediately relaxed it, maintaining his calm gaze. He bowed low, strictly adhering to the standard of a low-level server. Calm voice. Not flinching at all. "Sir, I am a temporary employee of the hotel. Please make way so I can finish my job." Malik's measured response and fearless attitude acted like oil poured onto the fire of Babatunde's arrogance. A dog at the bottom of society was supposed to tremble and cry, begging when he pointed it out, rather than using reason to speak back. Snatching a champagne glass from Malik's tray, tossing the entire amount of wine straight onto his white shirt chest. "You're dirtying my air and the air of the high-ranking partners here. Did you think sneaking out of the police station meant you could drag this lowly face to a banquet of the ultra-rich?" Freezing cold wine soaked through the thin dress shirt, staining a large patch across Malik's muscular chest. Drops of liquid trickled down to the toe of his old janitorial shoes. The surrounding guests started to cover their mouths in mockery, directing gazes full of contempt toward the mechanic. Malik did not raise a hand to wipe his face. He took a very deep breath. His chest heaved as he suppressed the flame of pride that wanted to burn down everything. He remembered the sound of his mother coughing up blood at the hometown clinic. The wages. He needed tonight's wages. Still keeping his back straight, bowing his head again. "Sir, you can throw wine on me, but you do not have the right to obstruct me from working to earn an honest wage." "Excuse me, sir." Babatunde's blood boiled. He took a step forward, deliberately kicking the toe of his polished leather shoe against Malik's shin, growling, his eyes flashing with extreme cruelty. "Honest? Where does a dirt-poor beggar protecting a cake-selling monster in the market get the right to speak the word honest in front of me? Kneel. Kneel down and wipe clean the few drops of wine that just splashed onto my shoes using your own filthy shirt. If not, I will call the hotel director to throw you out instantly. You won't receive a single dime tonight." The entire banquet hall held its breath. The threat struck Malik's only fatal weakness, not paying a single dime. Losing the 5,000 naira tonight meant his mother would die. Malik's mind went blank. His hands, dotted with scars from engine oil and wrenches, clenched into fists so tightly that the blue veins popped out. His calm eyes turned bloodshot. In this Lagos, the poor have no right to resist absolute power when the lives of their loved ones are held hostage. He slowly closed his eyes, forcing his chest to swallow down the bitterly suffocating lump called dignity. Amidst hundreds of prying eyes, the muscular mechanic slowly bent his legs. He knelt on one knee on the freezing cold marble floor, pulled a white napkin from his apron, and prostrated himself before Babatunde's shoes. Suppressing his emotions until his lips bled, his voice hoarse but still adhering to honorifics. "Sir, I will wipe them." Babatunde burst out laughing, a savage, supremely satisfying laugh echoing throughout the banquet hall. He used the toe of his shoe to lightly flick Malik's chin, relishing the feeling of trampling a person with a righteous soul into the mud of power. Trash is forever trash. You were born to kneel at the feet of this Babatunde, he declared loudly to the surrounding guests. Right at the moment Babatunde's laughter reached its peak, the crystal lights in the ballroom suddenly went out. A single, blinding spotlight shone directly onto the center podium. Billionaire Niyi Adabio, with silver-flecked hair, draped in a powerful black suit and bearing the sharp gaze of an old business wolf, had been standing there all along. Absolute silence instantly enveloped the entire space. Absolute silence engulfed the ballroom of the Grand Continental Hotel. Babatunde's savage laughter died in his throat. He slowly turned his head, his eyes widening in panic upon realizing that billionaire Niyi Adabio, the most powerful man in Lagos, was standing on the center podium, his cold gaze pinning him down like a sharp knife. Hundreds of guests, financial magnates, and politicians held their breath. The atmosphere was so stifling that one could hear the drops of wine dripping from Malik's shirt onto the marble floor. Billionaire Niyi slowly stepped down from the podium. Each of his footsteps echoed with dry, commanding sounds. He didn't look at the crowd, but walked straight toward Babatunde and the kneeling mechanic. Calm voice, but carrying the weight of 1,000 tons. Young man Babatunde, did you just say he was born to kneel at your feet? The value of a person is never written on the clothes they wear or the balance in their bank account, and the truth always works better when we don't try to polish it. Babatunde swallowed hard. His impeccably groomed skin broke out in a cold sweat. He tried to force a flattering smile, hastily stepping back half a pace, stammering, cowering. Sir, Chairman Nee, sir, you misunderstood. This lowly server dirtied my shoes. I was just teaching him a lesson in the etiquette of high society. Interrupting, firmly. Is your high society built on trampling the dignity of others? Niyi turned and nodded to the head of his security team. Open the main doors. The two giant ironwood doors of the banquet hall, intricately carved and inlaid with gold, slowly swung open. Blinding light from the hallway poured in. All eyes turned toward the entrance. Zikora stepped in. Gone was the old, baggy floral dress soaked in rainwater. Gone were the torn canvas shoes. Tonight, she was draped in a gorgeous golden silk evening gown, the diamonds on her neck and ears sparkling brilliantly under the crystal lights. Yet, what left the entire hall of guests in utter shock was that on the left half of this proud queen's face remained the bumpy, raw red, hideous burn scar. Babatunde froze. His eyes rolled back as if he had just seen a ghost. He recognized that scar, trembling and backing away, pointing at the door. Security! What kind of job are you guys doing? Why did you let this ragged market cake-selling monster slip in here? Kick her out right now. Zikora didn't stop walking. Her aura radiated absolute dominance, causing Babatunde's bodyguards to step back without daring to touch a single hair on her head. She walked down the red-carpeted aisle, her sharp gaze pinned directly on Babatunde. When she was only 3 steps away from him, Zikora stopped. She slowly pulled a pure white silk handkerchief from her jewel-encrusted handbag. Before hundreds of stunned eyes, Zikora brought the wet handkerchief to her face. She gave it a hard swipe. The sophisticated raw red silicone makeup peeled off, sticking tightly to the silk cloth. Under the bright lights, the hideous scar completely vanished, revealing a flawless half-face, smooth skin, and delicate features imbued with royal elegance. Babatunde's knees turned to jelly. His illusion of untouchable wealth had completely vanished, replaced by a naked shame and absolute terror. His mouth gaped open, his throat letting out meaningless sounds. Throwing the handkerchief, with the fake scar right below Babatunde's shoes, her voice cold and authoritative. Poverty does not strip away intellect, and a uniform, a title, or a bank balance does not give anyone permission to humiliate others. The other night, in the rain at the slum, you called me a monster. Yesterday morning, at the repair garage, you framed this man for stealing a Rolex watch to force him to his knees. Did you think your power could cover up all your crimes? Billionaire Niyi took a step forward, placed his hand on Zikora's shoulder. his fiery gaze turning toward the entire Lagos elite, introducing to all of you, the sole heir of the Adabio Empire, my daughter, Zikora Adabio, and her test over the past 3 weeks in the most impoverished markets of Lagos has exposed the true, despicable face of the man standing before us. Gasps of shock echoed throughout the banquet hall. Business partners who had once shaken Babatunde's hand hastily backed away from him as if he were carrying an infectious disease. Babatunde collapsed onto the marble floor, sweat drenching his expensive tuxedo. He tried to crawl toward Niyi, crying pitifully, hands clasped together. "Chairman, Lady Zikora, please forgive me. I had no idea you were the heiress. I was blind. Please give my family a chance." Sneering, looking at him with utter contempt. Respect bestowed upon the weak is true respect, and the flattery you're offering me right now is nothing but the cowardice of an opportunist. Saying that, Zikora turned her back on the crying, begging man. She walked over and stood before Malik, the mechanic who was still kneeling on one knee on the floor, his white shirt soaked in red wine. He looked up at her, his normally calm eyes now holding a soul-shaking astonishment. He couldn't believe the poor cake-selling girl who had once shared a cup of warm water with him under a leaky tin roof was the most powerful heiress in this city. Zikora slowly knelt down, disregarding her expensive evening gown sweeping across the wine-stained floor. She reached out her soft, meticulously groomed hands and grasped Malik's rough, calloused hands covered in wrench scars, choking up but resolute voice echoing across the banquet hall. "Stand up, Malik, the legs of a righteous man, a man willing to brave the pouring rain in the dead of night just to return 5 million naira to a poor stranger, must never be allowed to kneel at the feet of despicable people. You protected my dignity when I had nothing in my hands. Now, I will use this entire empire to protect you." Under the dazzling crystal lights, Malik slowly stood straight up. The sight of two people belonging to completely opposite extremes of Lagos society holding hands shattered all class prejudices, engraving a cruel yet fair theorem of karma. Malik's rough, calloused hand, covered in wrench scars, rested securely in Zikora's perfectly manicured soft hands. The contrast between them was brilliant and poignant beneath the crystal chandelier. Malik's chest heaved under the white dress shirt heavily stained with dark red wine. His mind was in shock. He looked at the glamorous woman before him, trying to find the silhouette of the poor huddled girl beneath the leaky awning yesterday. His calm eyes blinked slightly, a silent bewilderment surging. He wanted to pull his hand back, a natural reflex of a poor laborer standing before the ultra-rich, but Zikora gripped his hand tightly, absolutely refusing to let go. Right at that moment, Billionaire Nii Adabio raised his hand to signal his assistant, standing in the corner of the hall, echoing, powerful voice. "Turn on the main screen. Let all the elite of Lagos tonight witness how the heir of the Babatunde family behaves when he believes no one is watching him." The giant LED screen behind the podium flashed on. It wasn't financial charts or profit numbers. It was a video extracted from the security camera at Boss Ikechukwu's dilapidated repair garage. The image was sharp, the audio amplified clearly across the banquet hall. The entire ballroom watched in dead silence. On the screen, Babatunde stepped out of the silver supercar, disdainfully calling Zikora a monster. Everyone saw Malik using his own body to shield her. They saw Babatunde take off his diamond-encrusted Rolex and toss it onto the driver's seat, then return moments later to roar and frame the mechanic. They clearly heard the young master's savage laughter as he forced Malik to his knees in the pitch-black mud, making him kowtow and apologize. The silence in the Grand Continental Hotel's hall now thickened into utter contempt. Whispers began to erupt. Several financial magnates shook their heads and turned away. Babatunde collapsed flat onto the marble floor, his face as ashen as ash. Sweat poured down his flawless skin, soaking the collar of his tuxedo. He frantically crawled toward Billionaire Nii, extending both hands to try and grasp the chairman's trouser leg. Shattered, utterly panicked voice. "It's edited! Mr. Chairman, that footage has been altered! He provoked me first!" My family controls your largest logistics supply chain. Stepping back, coldly interrupting. A supply chain can be rebuilt with money. Dignity cannot. The Adabio family does not sign away the lives of tens of thousands of employees with a man who finds amusement in trampling the weak. Billionaire Nii turned to the legal director standing nearby. Cancel all 3 mega projects with the Babatunde family. Freeze all reciprocal credit accounts. First thing tomorrow morning, I want to see their stock hit rock bottom. Babatunde collapsed entirely. The power he had once used to try and suffocate a mechanic's life had now returned to crush him into dust. From outside the main doors, heavy footsteps marched in. 4 high-ranking police officers from the Criminal Investigation Department entered, carrying handcuffs, an emergency arrest warrant for slander, abuse of power, and bribing authorities had been signed and approved. Babatunde was grabbed by the armpits and dragged away. He had no strength left to struggle, only pathetic, choking sobs echoing down the luxurious hallway until he was out of sight. When the villain had been purged, Billionaire Nii turned and walked toward Malik. The old business wolf looked straight at the wine-stained mechanic, bowing deeply, maintaining a stoic decorum. Mr. Chairman, my lady, I am a lowly man, ignorant of the ways of high society. If my presence here soils the banquet, please allow me to step away. Zikora took a step forward, touching his chest where the red wine stain had spread. The sharp eyes of the queen now softened, brimming with genuine sorrow. Choking up but resolute voice, "You are never a lowly man, Malik. You are the noblest man I have ever met. This test was cruel, I know. I apologize for letting you stand out in the rain all night, endure beatings, and kneel in the mud. My father and I had to do it because in this world, those who approach me bring only muddy greed. I needed a man who dared to love a poor monster with a burn scar, a man willing to protect the dignity of others with his own life." Malik looked at Zikora, his breathing slowing down. Anger over being deceived flickered for a moment, but when he looked into the profound sincerity in her eyes, he understood the utter loneliness of those sitting on a pile of gold. Billionaire Nii smiled, a rare, warm smile breaking his harsh exterior. "Resilient mechanic, last night you said, living without dignity is no different from a stalled machine. You have passed the harshest test I have ever set. Starting tomorrow, the best medical team in Lagos will be flown on a private jet to Kano to pick up your mother. She will be treated under the best conditions." Tears suddenly welled up, reddening Malik's calm eyes. His mother's life was saved. His jaw trembled as he held back a sob. "And you will never have to crawl under a chassis to turn a bolt again," Nii continued. "The Adabio Group has a charity fund worth hundreds of millions of dollars dedicated to supporting education and healthcare for the slums. I need a CEO with a clean heart, a man who truly understands hunger and knows how to respect the people at the bottom of society. That position is yours." The entire banquet hall simultaneously erupted into a roaring round of applause. The billionaires and ministers who had previously turned their faces away in contempt for Malik were now applauding enthusiastically, their eyes filled with respect. Malik slowly turned to look at Zikora. The scar on her face was gone, but in his eyes, she was still the little cake-selling girl in the Lagos rain whom he was willing to use his entire life to protect. He smiled, a peaceful smile, as steady as a mountain of rock. Despite hundreds of camera lenses flashing, Zikora rested her head on Malik's broad but wine-stained shoulder. The story closed, amidst the dazzling lights of the Grand Continental, engraving a cruel yet eternal theorem. In life, those who use power and money to distort the dignity of others will one day be crushed by that very money. And true respect does not lie in the layers of silk draped over a person, but in how you treat the weakest when you believe no one is watching.